I'm Emily Chang, and this is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from this week in tech. Coming up, tech loses an ally after Gary Cohn exits the White House. What the loss of the president's top economic advisor means for the looming trade war with China and to Silicon Valley. Plus, the Amazon agenda, our deep dive into the ever-expanding footprint of America's e-commerce king, and not just the companies, but industries potentially in its crosshairs. And our extended interview with Google Cloud CEO Diane Greene, just one of the top female leaders in tech, we bring you ahead. First, to our lead. With Gary Cohn departing the White House, President Trump's desired trade tariffs are sending chills throughout the tech community, especially if those tariffs take aim at Chinese imports that include consumer electronics. Amazon and Apple could feel the impact, especially considering the products that they manufacture in China. And Apple may have the most to lose, with most iPhones, iPads, and more being assembled there. We discussed what a looming trade war could mean for the industry at large on Wednesday with Bloomberg Technology's executive editor Tom Giles and Max Abelson, who covers money and power for Bloomberg.
Wall Street is not happy. I mean, look, on the one hand, we can't go too far. I think the reality is that no one knows what's going on with this White House. And so I think that, you don't see the stock market losing, 10%. But people are upset because Gary Cohn, remember, he was the president of Goldman Sachs. He left being the number 2 guy at Goldman for the White House. And that came after Trump literally mocked Goldman Sachs on the campaign trail. So people were relieved that they had this guy who they saw as sort of a friend, someone who understood them, someone who could push to cut their taxes and cut corporate taxes. And now Gary Cohn is gone, and that's sort of destabilizing. I talked to Wall Street executives over the last 24 hours who sort of said, like, this freaks me out. Someone compared it to losing a security blanket.
Tom, let's look at Apple as an example, because it's still unclear if Apple would be marked as an importer, if this would really hit the companies that manufacture Apple products like Foxconn or Honhai. What does this really mean as far as we know for Apple, its products, its supply chain?
Right. So Apple has to be caught in the middle of this somehow, given the fact they're the world's largest, most valuable company. They are importing products from China, both finished goods, and a lot of their supply chain is in China. So to the extent that China's affected, Apple's not going to get off scot-free here. The question is, in a worst-case scenario, we've talked to a few analysts here, it certainly would be affected, but at a company that generates so many tens of billions of dollars a year, we've heard people talk about this as something more of a rounding error. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars. Not, at the end of the day, a big factor. It really all depends on how much of a levy is going to be imposed on steel, aluminum, finished goods. Trade wars aren't good for big multinational companies like Apple and to some degree Amazon. Although Amazon and some of these other tech companies, the FANGs that people like to talk about, are less affected because they're so service-based. Microsoft, a software provider. Facebook, social media delivered over the internet. Amazon, the lion's share of what it does is not consumer electronics, although the echo is getting bigger and bigger.
Apple in particular, we know President Trump took aim at the company on the campaign trail. Tim Cook has since met with President Trump at the White House a couple of times, so who knows where that relationship stands. Max, is there a silver lining here?
There might be a silver lining for Wall Street, considering that Steven Mnuchin is the Treasury Secretary. That guy worked for Goldman Sachs just like Gary Cohn. But, to be honest, when I hear Tom talk about Apple, and I'm reminded that Trump mocked Apple, considering that directionally no one, as you say, knows what's happening, if Donald Trump decides that he needs someone to beat up on, I feel like I've been hearing strains where it might not be Wall Street. Like, what if it's big tech? I feel like the guy who made the movie about Clinton Cash, I think his name is Scherzer, something like that. His next documentary, which is going to debut at Cannes, but not during the Real Film Festival, I think is about the big tech companies. And I can sort of smell in the air, the sense that Trump, maybe the new Wall Street, the new sort of punching bag, might, instead of being Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, it could be, Amazon and Apple.
Marty Shaker was on the show yesterday during the breaking news, and he talked about how he thinks that the relationship between Silicon Valley and the White House, Tom, has taken a bit of a pause because we just don't know. What is the sort of general vibe or response from the tech community so far about these tariffs in particular?
So what you have to think about with Silicon Valley is, to the extent that we are going to look at foreign nations as kind of the enemy, that's going to have a big impact. There's lots of different ways. And I think the biggest way that I want to talk about is when you look at the big deal, the biggest deal in tech, which we broke here at Bloomberg, Broadcom trying to buy Qualcomm. This is a transaction that is hitting a buzzsaw at CFIUS, the Committee for Foreign Investment in the U.S. They're looking at this, and what they're saying is, to the extent that this transaction would undermine our competitiveness as a country vis-a-vis countries like China, CFIUS doesn't want to see it happen. Treasury is raising objections. We wrote about the letter that they published earlier this week that says we don't want to see this transaction go through. On one hand, that sounds friendly to tech companies. On the other hand, if you're Broadcom, you don't want to see a big deal like this, a big game-changing deal, get blocked. So how much are the companies, our big tech companies, going to get caught in this larger narrative of U.S. competitiveness and U.S. competitiveness with countries like China?
And what does it mean for companies like Xiaomi that have been trying to crack the U.S. market, but they are coming with products from China?
It's not going to get easier. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to sell phones, tablets, laptops, it's not going to get any easier for you to get a toehold in the U.S. under a regime like this.
Now, Max, you talked to a lot of people about what Gary Cohn might do next. You got some interesting answers. Any inkling as to what he will do next, and also who will fill his role?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the truth about someone like Gary Cohn is it's sort of like trying to figure out the White House. Gary Cohn spent 25 years as a Goldman Sachs first as a trader and then by Lloyd Blankfein's side, and then he went straight to the White House. I mean, the truth of the matter is, the way the world is going, it's not that insane to think he could go back to Goldman Sachs, especially because Dina Powell just announced that she's returning. I think she's going to the management committee. I mean, it would be a bad look for the revolving door, the idea that, people can leave Goldman Sachs, go accrue political power, and then turn that right back into a Goldman Sachs job. I think there's some expectation from people around him that he could have a Main Street job. Actually, absurdly enough, someone said that he could work for SpaceX, but it looks like they've got wonderful management, including one of the biggest women in tech. But I mean, there's also a chance someone said that Gary Cohn should just go spend 6 months on the beach in the Bahamas, and I feel like of all the options, that one probably seems like the most realistic.
I love that idea for him. What about who would fill his job, and how important is it that that's another banker?
It's just so crazy to think about. I mean, Donald Trump, if you were pressed and someone was twisting your arm and you had to, say, what does Donald Trump stand for? I'm pretty sure you would sort of say, populism, this idea of the Stephen Bannon cooked up idea of populism, that Donald Trump sort of represents the average person. It's just so remarkable to think that he is a billionaire who has surrounded himself with billionaires. I mean, Bloomberg News has done a really good job of explaining how his cabinet is the richest cabinet in the history of America. So, I mean, on the one hand, I feel like it would be crazy to guess that he's going to pick anybody but another tycoon, someone like Wilbur Ross or Stephen Mnuchin. I can almost sort of imagine him moving someone who's already there to take Gary's job, shuffling around. People I talked to said it's hard to imagine people leaving from Wall Street to go to the White House, considering how chaotic things are there. I mean, it doesn't exactly seem like a place you go and stay for a while.
That was Bloomberg's Max Abelson and Chom Giles. Well, President Trump may have an ally in Elon Musk, at least when it comes to China's trade protections. Musk, who is in a bitter fight with Chinese authorities to build a factory in Shanghai, tweeted his response to an earlier post by the president, writing, "Do you think the U.S. and China should have equal and fair rules for cars?" The Tesla co-founder and CEO noted China charges 25% import duties on cars compared to America's levy of 2.5%. He says it's like competing in the Olympics wearing lead shoes. Coming up, our important conversations with top female voices in technology. We will bring you Amazon's Stephanie Landry and Google Cloud CEO Diane Green later this hour. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Well, another day, another legal battle for Uber. Pennsylvania's Attorney General is suing the ride-hailing giant for violating the state's data breach notification law. The suit says Uber failed to disclose the hack that affected over 13,000 Uber drivers in Pennsylvania. Uber had known for over a year that this breach potentially impacted 57 million passengers worldwide. Under the law, the AG's team can seek civil penalties as high as $13.5 million from Uber. Well, this Thursday was International Women's Day, and we brought you a slew of top female leaders in technology, from Google Cloud CEO Diane Greene to Amazon's Stephanie Landry and Megan Joyce, Uber's regional general manager for the U.S. and Canada. Before Joyce joined Uber, she worked in both the private and public sector at Bain Capital and as senior policy advisor at the U.S. Treasury. We started our conversation on Uber's business and its changing culture.
I've been extraordinarily lucky and have had a remarkable experience at Uber. Since the day I came on board, I've been working for an incredible woman who was leading our East Coast organization at the time. We had an org that was 50-50 men and women, that was really supportive of people of different backgrounds and frankly different styles. And it was a place where I really felt like I could thrive and I could really encourage those around me to thrive. And to be honest, a place where I knew I could come into work every day and make decisions with integrity and fight for what I knew was right. I think the disturbing thing that we've all realized over the course of the past year is not everyone in our organization can say the same thing. And so it's been invigorating in a way to say that this is our mission going forward. And I've been deeply involved in ensuring that our culture and our norms and our business practices going forward are ones that we can all be proud of. I think the exciting thing is that we have teams in the company who have shown that we can grow and we can scale in a way that we feel proud of. And now it's up to us to ensure that every single team across the company can say the same thing. And I'm really excited about the progress that we've seen to date.
You were obviously hired by Travis Kalanick, and there's been a big changeover. Curious, how your work and your mandate has changed under Dara Khosrowshahi, and if you're seeing an actual change in the culture at Uber as a result of his leadership.
There has been a distinct change in our company, in the mandate from the top, and in the direction that we're going, even strategically. I think we have acknowledged that we need to articulate and hold our teams accountable to doing the right thing every time, even if it's something that is going to cost us a bit more, especially in the short term.
Where is the balance of power between growth versus profitability? Talk to us about where the pendulum is and what you've been told by Dara about his priorities.
Yeah, we need both growth and profitability. Any company does, and especially if it's optimizing for the long term, then we need to ensure that we are continuing to invest in long-term growth, but ensuring that we're doing so in a sustainable way. And I think the challenge of any business leader is to hold those two things in top of mind at the same time, and to ensure that we're helping navigate a company through those trade-offs so that we're consistently putting the long-term interests of the company first and ensuring that we're setting ourselves up for long-term sustainable success.
The competitive landscape has also changed, and there's some data to show that Lyft gained riders as Uber was going through this big cultural transition. What do you think you have on the competition, and are you at all concerned about the threat of Lyft?
Look, I think riders and drivers always have a choice about whether to use Uber or not. They can use another ride-sharing platform, or they can drive their own car, or choose to walk, or some other alternative. And at the end of the day, what we find really exciting is the opportunity for people to be able to leave their keys at home, or not buy that second car, or never buy the first car to begin with, and consider using options that are actually more sustainable for our cities at large. When we do that, then we'll need fewer land in our cities allocated to parking. We'll have less congestion on our streets. We'll have safer roads because we don't have people who are getting behind the wheel drunk. And we'll have great opportunities for drivers who need it. And so I think as we think about some of the lessons we've learned over the past 12 months, it's to ensure that we are consistently delivering on the promise to riders and drivers so that we have a better option than anything else out there.
That was Uber's Megan Joyce. We also caught up with Amazon Vice President Stephanie Landry for International Women's Day. She launched and runs the company's Prime Now Express delivery service and recently became the business leader for Amazon Fresh and Amazon Restaurants, its restaurant delivery service. We got started on how the company can continue to retain its top talent.
We have over 4,000 open jobs in just our Seattle offices today. We're constantly looking at our businesses and reevaluating and making sure that we're applying the right amount of resources in different areas. But we have so many jobs open right now. We're looking for people all over the city and actually worldwide. So I think that the opportunities here are tremendous. And I've certainly had an incredible career over the past 14 years. So I don't think that there's necessarily any sort of issue with the amount of jobs that we have.
Stephanie, you now run Amazon Prime Now and Amazon Fresh. Talk to us about just how big Prime Now is and how many people are using it.
The connection of all the businesses that I run are that we deliver food, often fresh food, and we deliver it really fast to customers, in some cases as little as an hour. The Prime Now business itself is currently available in over 50 cities worldwide, 9 countries, and in the US we're in over 30 cities. So we started that business in 2018, so it's expanded incredibly fast.
You were involved in the kickoff of Amazon Fresh grocery deliveries, and now, of course, Amazon is all in. Amazon has bought Whole Foods, but the company still lags Walmart in grocery delivery, and there is a lot of competition. What is the path to greater domination in grocery?
Throughout my 14-year career here at Amazon, what we really focus on is creating a great customer experience, and specifically, really a great customer experience for our Prime members. And I think that our collaboration with Whole Foods gives us an opportunity to solve a really important problem. I have a 6-year-old, I'm a mom. Taking a little kid through the grocery store is a big chore, especially if it's for things that you know exactly what you want and what you need. And being able to get it delivered to your home is just such an incredible convenience. And so I think that our collaboration, between the Whole Foods company and Amazon to be able to bring people groceries at great prices is an incredible opportunity that our Prime customers are really going to love. Just today we launched grocery delivery in as little as an hour in San Francisco and Atlanta. That's joining 4 other cities that we launched a few weeks ago. So we're really excited about that opportunity for customers.
That was Amazon's Stephanie Landry. Coming up, Asia is encouraging its biggest tech firms to bring their listings home. We will head there next. And the Bank of Amazon, the company's new moves into the world of financing later this hour. This is Bloomberg. Tencent chair Pony Ma is calling on the Chinese government to introduce an ID system that would link travel documents with a mobile phone as part of a plan to boost regional trade between Hong Kong and the mainland. Ma met with the media ahead of China's annual National People's Congress and explained his legislative proposals.
Border controls and different taxation regimes are 2 of the biggest obstacles for the Greater Bay Area project. Also, the free movement of high-skilled workers is yet to happen, because Hong Kong is concerned about the inflow of labor. So I suggested the idea of an ID system linking Hong Kong and mainland China to allow people to cross the border and make electronic payments more easily.
Ma also fielded a question about the risk around blockchain and the cryptocurrency market. Take a listen.
Blockchain is a really innovative technology, but we must be careful using it. Technology is good, but usage is important, and ICOs for digital currencies means a lot of risk. I'm not saying the technology isn't mature, but if everyone can easily create and use digital currencies, there could be huge issues for regulators. So even though cryptocurrencies are now very popular, we haven't participated in an ICO.
Meantime, some of the biggest tech firms in China are being lured by regulators to float shares on the country's exchanges through dual listings. This coincides with an effort by neighboring Hong Kong to rework its regulations to lure companies to its exchange. Peter Elstrom is the managing editor of Asia Tech coverage for Bloomberg. He joined us live from Tokyo, along with Bloomberg Tech's Selena Wang.
Well, the backdrop is interesting here. You have the annual National People's Congress, this gathering of delegates, thousands of delegates from all over the country. And in the past, you would see business leaders come and kind of express their support for the administration. But they were typically traditional businesses in real estate, the state-owned enterprises. And this year, you're really seeing the coming out of these technology companies that have become some of the most valuable in the world. So leaders like Robin Li at Baidu is talking about listing his shares in mainland China, along with some of the other companies, including Sogu and NetEase. And they're talking about listing shares in mainland China in addition to listings overseas. So there's kind of a burnishing of the existing party's reputation if they're able to lure these real stars home. And it helps the tech companies because valuations in mainland China tend to be quite high.
Selena, talk to us a little bit more about that, the pros and cons of this structure.
So the Chinese stock market doesn't have the best reputation. They have some difficult regulations that these companies have to comply with. They're known for volatility and for sometimes spontaneous government intervention. So as Peter mentioned, this would be a good move on the Chinese government's part to really boost the reputation and attract some of these big listings. It's also great for a lot of domestic retail and institutional investors. They haven't really been able to participate in some of the greatest wealth creation in China's history of Alibaba, Baidu, and Tencent. So it would give them a chance to participate and really boost the valuations of these companies. And the retail investors are certainly very excited to get in on this if it becomes possible.
And yet, Peter, some folks won't be pleased about this. Who are they?
Well, there's competition for these listings, certainly. And right now, Hong Kong is competing to draw more attention. Historically, they have not allowed the dual-class shares that you've seen at many U.S. tech companies, including some foreign companies that are listed in the U.S. So they're competing aggressively for this business. But you can't have dual listings in places like Hong Kong and mainland China, or the U.S. and mainland China, too.
Now, Selena, there are some big Asia Tech IPOs in the pipeline, Tencent Music, Xiaomi. How do we expect those companies in particular to proceed?
Absolutely. Well, these changing regulations, both in Hong Kong and mainland China, are going to play a big role in what they ultimately decide. Xiaomi, we've reported they're considering a dual listing both in Hong Kong as well as in China. Tencent Music Entertainment, we've also heard, is considering a sort of dual listing, and Tencent, as we know, is already listed in Hong Kong. So these stock exchanges are going to do everything that they can to attract these companies and gain those fees and to become the global leader here. Hong Kong, as we know, has really fallen far behind New York in terms of attracting these companies, and they really want to get ahead of the game again.
And Peter, do you have any thoughts or inklings as to how those potential listings could play out this year?
Well, it's interesting for Xiaomi. Certainly the big prize is going to be Xiaomi this year. We've reported, as Selena mentioned, that they're leaning towards Hong Kong as their primary listing. But if they do list in mainland China, too, they would tap into that consumer demand. They'd give customers of Xiaomi an opportunity to buy into the shares, and that could help their valuation quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out in particular.
Thanks to Bloomberg's Peter Elstrom and Selena Wang there. Still ahead, we will sit down with Diane Greene, Google Cloud CEO, how she is fending off the threat of Amazon and doubling down on innovation. And a reminder, all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. Now, back to our coverage of International Women's Day. Diane Greene has been CEO of Google Cloud since 2015, and it is a big job. Last year, Alphabet technical advisor Eric Schmidt said Alphabet has invested some $30 billion on its cloud services. Before Google, Diane Greene was founder and CEO of VMware for a decade. We sat down with her and got started by asking how she made the jump from VMware to her current role at Google.
I was sort of in the background helping, and as I got more and more involved and got to know first what was available at Google in terms of the phenomenal infrastructure and technology and engineers, and secondly, and just, sort of realizing what a big deal the cloud is. I mean, I knew it was a big deal, but it's just sort of profound when you think about this is a place where everybody in the world can share, and that the whole world is going digital and being connected to all these mobile devices and sensors, and you can, kind of make this available to anybody to use, almost democratize technology through it. Anyhow, it was really exciting to me the more into it I got, so Google had been talking to me about doing it, and I had been helping them find someone, and then eventually I just said, okay, I would do it.
The cloud is hotly contested territory. Amazon is in the lead, and then Microsoft. Mm-hmm. Which one of them are you more afraid of?
Well, I can't say I'm afraid of either of them. I do pay attention to them. But, last year the cloud did about $45 billion in business, and you could argue it's about $1 trillion business, so there's quite a bit of headroom for everybody there. And Microsoft and Amazon have different strengths, so does Google. What I feel like is we clearly are highly differentiated in our machine learning and data analytics. We're very differentiated in our security. If you want to keep your information secure, from G Suite, our productivity suite on down to the basic network, I think we know, we're the people that discovered Heartbleed, Spectre, Meltdown. So we have these differentiations that are where all companies are going. So that's why I can't say I'm afraid. I do see we have a lot of work cut out for us, and we're working extremely hard.
You said last year you think Google has a pretty good shot of being number one in 5 years. Do you believe that still?
I think it's possible. Those words were quoted a little bit out of context, but we certainly are executing extraordinarily well. We in the end of January in Google's earnings call said that we passed $1 billion a quarter in 2017, and that Google Cloud Platform is the fastest growing of the public clouds according to publicly available numbers, which puts us in the triple-digit growth. So just tremendous momentum. G Suite over 4 million paying customers. So it's definitely a possibility. It's more about, we're benchmarking our own growth against ourselves, and we're pretty happy with it.
Speaking of the metrics, we always want more. And when will Google actually give more details on how the cloud business is doing?
Well, we will in good time. It's so interesting to me that in January we finally gave some metrics, and now it's most frequently asked question, when are you going to give real metrics? Well, they were pretty real, but they weren't the kind of public company reporting metrics you're looking for, I'm sure.
Do you think blockchain will change cloud computing? And if so, how?
Well, blockchain gives you this distributed mechanism to verify things, which is powerful for everything. The cloud, it's powerful for security, it's going to be powerful for health, and because the cloud is, where every company is going to operate and all the data is going to be, it's going to be, it's inevitable that blockchain is going to play a gigantic role in cloud and in our fully distributed world, of which cloud plays a very meaningful role because it's where all the data gets shared.
That was Google Cloud CEO Diane Greene. We also spoke with Ellen Pao for International Women's Day. She is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the Kapoor Center for Social Impact and is perhaps best known for suing her venture capital firm Kleiner Perkins for gender discrimination. She lost that suit in court, but some would argue she has won in the court of public opinion. We talked about the lack of diversity that persists in technology and why.
It's more of this backlash against change, and it's trying to fix the problems that have taken place for the past several decades in tech, where we've created these systems that favor homogeneity. And how do we change it? Well, it requires taking down those systems and really trying to catch up, and to also just transform how you do things. And that is uncomfortable for people who succeeded in the system.
You've suggested that people need to be fired in order for real change to happen. Who should be fired?
I think people who don't believe that women and people of color and people who are older and people who are immigrants are equal employees who are able to do the same work and have these innate biases against them should be fired. If you can't treat your coworker equitably and fairly, then you really have no place in the workplace.
How do we know who those people are? I mean, is this a matter of if you haven't gotten results, or if you haven't tried, or if you've made an untoward comment? Like, how do we identify the people who aren't doing enough?
I don't know that it's really not doing enough. I do think there are people who are, saying terrible things about their coworkers, who are, sharing private information about their coworkers, so their coworkers get attacked by outsiders. Like, those people should be fired. There is no place for people who are enabling attacks on your coworkers in the workplace. You want people who believe in your culture, and if they don't believe in your culture and they show that, then they don't belong, right? They're not promoting your workplace ideals, they're not on the same page, and they're making it harder for others to do their job.
You were CEO of Reddit for a time. You made some dramatic changes that actually the research shows actually helped cut down on hate on the site. And one of the questions I ask in my book is, how might the internet be different if more women had been involved in creating these systems and designing these systems in the first place? Do you think that online harassment and trolling would be such a problem at whether it's Reddit or Facebook or Twitter? If women had been there from the start?
I think it's unfortunate that they were mostly started by white men and run by white men for so long, and that most of the engineering teams were white men, because nobody ever experienced it the same way that people who were of color or who were women or non-binary experienced it. I mean, it's if you don't experience it, it's hard for you to address it. And there wasn't anybody calling attention to these problems. And you see it on other platforms too, like Nextdoor and Airbnb, who now are trying to fix problems that came from a homogeneous workforce, and now they're trying to bring in changes to make sure that their platforms are more open and more inclusive and don't reflect the biases that their early employees didn't experience.
Thanks to Ellen Pao of the Kapoor Center. Now, a story we continue to watch. Twitter is trying to stop alleged cryptocurrency scams on its platform. The company says it's taking steps to prevent crypto-related accounts from engaging with others in a deceptive manner. Facebook recently banned ads tied to cryptocurrency. Still ahead, Amazon continues its bout of expansion from your doorstep to your wallet to your healthcare. We will explain how it all fits into Amazon's bigger plan. Plus, the votes are in, and Italy is getting a new anti-establishment government. And once again, people are ready to blame social media for the outcome. This is Bloomberg. Amazon is reportedly offering a discount on its Prime membership to the millions of Medicaid recipients in the United States. The move is another step toward lower-income shoppers and keeping pressure on Walmart. Under the offer, customers on Medicaid can get Amazon Prime for $5.99 a month, about half the usual cost. And now is a good time to take stock of the state of Amazon, from its ballooning e-commerce and cloud businesses to newer forays into groceries and hardware. In January, Amazon also announced a healthcare venture with JPMorgan Chase and Berkshire Hathaway. In February, the company acquired doorbell startup Ring for roughly $1 billion. And in March, Amazon is now looking into providing its customers with checking accounts and has announced it's expanding Whole Foods deliveries to Amazon Prime customers in more U.S. cities. So how do all these announcements fit into the complex operations of Amazon? We spoke with Bloomberg Tech executive editor Brad Stone.
It's a company that one of its products is its culture and the way that it decentralizes and empowers teams to go innovate and even requires them to innovate. And so you've got, tens of thousands of people working for Amazon around the world looking for growth and expansion opportunities, and it yields everything you just mentioned.
Not every new business, though, they have started has succeeded, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they spent 10 years trying to make grocery stores work. It didn't. That's the Amazon Fresh delivery service. It didn't work as well as they had hoped. Resulted in last year's blockbuster acquisition of Whole Foods.
So talk to us about the expanding Whole Foods delivery business and what that means.
I mean, there's so much they can do inside Whole Foods. They can bring Amazon Pay into the checkout. They want to do a loyalty club for Prime members. They could redesign the grocery store, make it friendlier to customers. But the easy stuff is delivering from those supermarkets and from the Whole Food supply chain right to people's homes. And that's what we're starting to see in a couple of cities, including here in San Francisco. My colleagues Olivia Zaleski and Ellen Hewitt wrote a story about it today about how poor Instacart, that had the delivery relationship with Whole Foods, is now getting shunted aside to the back hallway as the Amazon workers come in and start delivering groceries to people's homes.
Gene Munster, who's watched Amazon for a long time, now at Loop Ventures, predicted earlier that Amazon might buy Target next. Take a listen to what he had to say in January.
The future of retail is going to be a combination, and I would bet that investors would view this as Amazon. The takeaway would be Amazon's taking over the world, and that's a good thing.
Is Amazon taking over the world a good thing?
Oh, well, maybe for Amazon investors, obviously, the company's performance has been stellar. The stock price has multiplied by a factor of 4 just over the last 4 or 5 years. But no, I mean, obviously, the bigger it gets, the more kind of industries it enters, the more questions about its sort of market power arise. So maybe we could say great for customers, certainly, that Amazon kind of brings its long-term orientation, willingness to lose money, to pass on the benefits over to customers in the form of lower prices. Great for customers, but sort of destabilizing to a lot of other industries and raising some questions about market consolidation.
It hasn't been all great news for Amazon over the last year. Roy Price, the head of Amazon Studio, left. Amazon Studios struggling to sort of get back on its feet. Also, a big high-profile departure today, Amazon Prime's Greg Greeley leaving for Airbnb. What do you make of that one?
Well, Greg Greeley, he was in my book. He was an old-timer. He started in the finance department, and it was the first guy. There was a product, probably people don't remember it, Super Saver Shipping, where for the first time, if people wanted to wait a few extra days, they could get their shipping for free. It cost Amazon a lot of money, but it cemented the loyalty of customers, and that was the beginning of the pathway that led to Prime, another product that he headed up more recently, where they were basically using their efficiencies in the supply chain to pass on benefits to customers. So, a senior member of the team, someone that was going to spend some more time in the Whole Foods division, but that bench is extremely deep. Actually, the bigger story is how little turnover they have in the upper ranks, and so I think Airbnb, who's brought him over to be president of their homes division, just has a really experienced executive who knows operations and knows marketplaces.
Speaking of, the cost of delivery, these things that they're offering to customers, don't come cheap, and 2-hour delivery is really expensive on the Amazon side. Is that at some point going to hurt them, when they start to raise prices that are more comparable with what they actually are?
Well, you can always look at it as a cost curve. And in the beginning, yeah, it probably costs a lot of money, particularly when the distribution of customers that are ordering from things like Prime Now is small. But, this is the whole long-term thing that Jeff Bezos loves to talk about. They're willing to do that for 10 years. And as they get the concentration of customers in neighborhoods higher, then the cost per delivery comes down. And they're sort of uniquely situated to be able to do that and to kind of suffer the early bad economics for the longer-term payoff. So, yeah, it might look poor. It might look bad now when you've got one truck making one delivery in one neighborhood, but fast forward in 5 years and suddenly that truck's full of stuff.
What do you make of Amazon buying that Ring doorbell company for $1 billion and their, efforts, Amazon Key, to have this sort of concierge service, a delivery person who can come inside your door and drop off your packages? I mean, even they have house cleaning services that they're testing out.
Right. I wrote about this in our tech newsletter, Fully Charged, on Monday. I mean, in the short term, Amazon is up against Google and to some extent Apple in this kind of voice assistant home automation world, and it's a novelty now, and people love, quizzing Alexa and getting the weather. But in the future, it's got to be utility. So it's got to be opening your door, dimming your lights. And, Amazon works with third-party appliance makers, but the more they can bring in-house, probably the better experience it is. And then you're right, over the longer term, not only allowing the delivery guy to come in your door, but maybe monitoring your door from work, letting your housekeeper in, letting the plumber in, not having to wait at home for the cable guy, all sorts of things. I call it the true lock-in, when they control your doorway. It's pretty powerful.
Thanks to Bloomberg's Brad Stone. Meantime, Amazon says it is aware of a bug in its Alexa feature and is working on a fix. The problem? Some users say they've heard strange laughing noises at random from the Echo Home speakers. The company didn't say when the fix would be deployed, but Amazon can push updates to the voice service automatically. And speaking of Amazon, coming up, the battle for the cloud continues to heat up. We'll talk to the man behind one company looking to stave off giants like Amazon and Microsoft next. This is Bloomberg. BlackBerry is suing Facebook for patent infringement, claiming the social media giant uses its technology in Facebook's messaging app. It's asking that Facebook be ordered to stop providing its primary app, as well as Facebook Messenger, Workplace Chat, WhatsApp Messenger, and Instagram applications and websites. In the past, Facebook execs have explained that in the tech industry, copying what works is sometimes necessary. It publicly credits Snapchat for creating the popular Stories function. Well, the world of cloud content management got some big news in the last couple of weeks when Dropbox announced it was the latest such company to file for an IPO. One company that beat them to the public punch was rival Box, which recently announced that its revenue missed forecasts, sending its share price tumbling. Shares have picked back up in the last couple of days. We spoke with Box CEO and co-founder Aaron Levie on Tuesday.
Q4 itself, the quarter we just came off of, was by all accounts very strong. So we did 136.7 million in revenue. Analyst estimates were at exactly that number, and that was the range that we guided to. We did a couple hundred million, over 200 million in billings, over 13 million in free cash flow. So really strong quarter overall, and it was sort of really what Box looks like when we're executing at our best, serving some of the largest customers on the planet, insurance agencies and companies, major banks, government agencies. So we did 78 deals over $100,000 and 9 deals over $1 million. What ended up happening was we guided to a decelerated rate for FY19, the year we're in right now, and certainly that was lower than analyst expectations, hence the pressure on the stock. And really the reason for this is we are transitioning from a single product company to a multi-product company, and as we are doing that, the way that we're selling is to serve bigger customers and bigger deals, and we wanted to make sure that we set ourselves up for a really good foundation for the year that would have some levers for accelerated growth either later this year or especially next year. So we're still on our path to $1 billion in revenue over the next few years, but we did want to make sure that we were a little bit more conservative in how we were guiding.
Now, I know you've been asked about Dropbox many times over the years, including by yours truly.
Yeah, thank you.
Now that you've seen the numbers and they have filed to go public, are you concerned about the competition?
I don't think the numbers or the S1 sort of changes the competitiveness of the business. So we've generally kind of known at a high level how they were performing. I think Dropbox's numbers are sort of a tale of two types of companies. One is a consumer revenue business, and that's about 60 or 70% of their revenue. That's end users or consumers like you and I using it for either professional or personal use cases. And then about a third of the revenue is B2B. And so that is probably the only part of the business that looks anything like Box. and that tilts much more to small business or teams, whereas our revenue tilts toward mid-sized companies and large enterprises.
And why couldn't they go after the large enterprise?
Well, I think that they've, in some cases, been trying over the past 5 or 10 years, and I think they've ended up tilting their focus back to where they're really, really good on the consumer SMB side. And our companies over time have evolved to look very different. So the kind of sales force you need, the kind of consultants you need, professional services, the level of security, compliance, and regulatory controls you have to build into the platform end up looking like a very different company at scale. So the thing that our 1,800 employees do every single day looks very different than what Dropbox's employees do. Even though maybe in name we are similar, where we both store, let you share files, the General Electrics of the world or the Eli Lillys of the world end up needing a different type of functionality, and that's what we've largely focused on in the past decade.
You've got a couple years on them as a public company. Any advice for Drew Houston?
I generally don't give that much advice to pseudo competitors, but I think the more that we can obviously both be as clear as possible in our two businesses, the better. I think this is going to put a massive spotlight on this industry. I think that's good for both of us. We're collectively going after a $40 to $50 billion market, so there's no shortage of addressable market for both of us to go and tackle. And so we're, again, focusing more on enterprises. They're focusing more on consumers and SMBs, and I think there's plenty of market for both of our businesses.
Now that Box is cash flow positive, you said you're going to start investing more. Where? Are there any features out there or companies that you might like to acquire?
Yeah, so I'm not going to be able to announce any kind of corp dev moves today, but
why not?
Sorry, it just, IR and PR and corp dev and honestly the SEC, they all have problems with this. So someday we'll be able to get there. But we are very focused on certainly our organic growth and our organic investment in R&D. We do tuck-in acquisitions here and there to accelerate our roadmap. But the best way to think about our roadmap is if you are a 50,000 person company or a 100,000 person company and you're transforming how your business works or operates in the digital age, maybe you're a bank, maybe you're a life sciences company, maybe you're a government, we want to be the backbone for how you're managing, securing, and working with your information. So we have a lot of products that deal with bringing more intelligence into Box and AI into Box, a lot of solutions that go deeper into security or compliance to be able to better serve our customers. So these tend to be the focus areas for the business right now.
Bloomberg has just confirmed that Gary Cohn is leaving his post at the White House.
Breaking news.
Obviously, was a COO of Goldman Sachs. This has been speculated for a while now. You've been a very outspoken opponent of the Trump administration. What do you make of this in the context of, in general, where we are more than a year into this administration? Like, are we better or worse off than you thought we would be?
I honestly, we are so off the path of where I could even imagine. Because generally we tend to think linearly about these things, and this has just been very nonlinear. So I think the Gary resignation would just lead to more, internal chaos that I think we've already been seeing. So incredibly hard to know how I would compare, where we are today versus where you could have been, thinking a year ago or whatever. But in general, it's not good to see that lack of stability and maybe steady hands of some of the people that he was surrounded by.
Do you think it'll hurt business?
I have no idea. I mean, I think that businesses and the market probably appreciated having somebody with Gary Cohn's background and maybe political sort of views involved in the administration. Very pro-trade, very sort of oriented toward a growth economy, and so I think that this could put some risk from the policies, and that's really what matters a lot with these types of roles is who is advising the president, and then ultimately what are the policies that we see enacted, and I think having somebody like Gary out of the system, and not advising Trump is I can't imagine as a positive thing.
That was Aaron Levy, Box CEO and co-founder. And that does it for this edition of the Best of Bloomberg Technology. We will bring you all the latest in tech throughout the week. Tune in every day, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. And remember, all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology weekdays. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.